I'm combining the features. So it's important to understand this when you're going to use that painting option, that you're going to want to use masking in essence to tell ZBrush what part of the vertex paint-wise do you not want to take into account. And in this scenario, I only want the part that I literally just painted to be in the situation. Or let's not forget, with the mask change points, you guys still have the undo history. So even if you make multiple sculpts, strokes here, and multiple painting, you're going to have the ability to go mask all those off and then flip them and inverse it and do whatever you want, right? So this is pretty awesome and pretty great way to go again, tweaking and adjusting stuff that already exists to us, right? So I'm going to kick it back to Michael now and show you guys, we still got more, there's still more. So we're going to kick it back to Michael and he's going to show you guys even some more items as
well. Cool. Paul. And you know, like I mentioned before, you know, the exploration, going back to your undo history, and I showed a little bit on the hard surface, and even the stuff Paul showed, I'm going to be showing you guys, and just some more examples of, you know, how I might use that in other scenarios, you know, from organic to hard surface and back. A lot of really, really useful stuff here. So one of them is the ability to go from one stage to another, or, you know, having a it's basically a state. You have one state and then you have another state for any subtool here. So to kind of set the scene, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the floor here. I'm going to go to the front. And you're going to see I have this object set right in the middle of my scene. Here's my x-axis, my y-axis, bottom up. So now if I turn on X symmetry in my keyboard, just by tapping X, or if I go over to transform, and we have activate symmetry is basically being toggled on when I hit the X key. So now what I can do, so I can go through here, I can move across X symmetry. In fact, I can do X and Y symmetry. However, since this isn't in the world center, it's kind of on its own center. I got to go up here to L sim. That's the local symmetry. So it's going to look at the local symmetry of this bounding box for this individual object. And now I can do X, Y, and Z symmetry even if I wanted to. Even cooler, if I go over here, remember our Y-axis, up and down, I can say Y symmetry with a radial count, and now I can have radial symmetry on this object. However, really, I want this object to go back here behind the eyeball. You know, basically why I have this out here is I want to be able to put rivets around the eyeball, but eventually it's going to need to go back behind that eyeball. So that's where geometry stager comes into play. You're going to see there's a home stage, target stage, and switch stage in here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this my home stage. Go ahead and set it. And then I'm going to go ahead and move. Let's go ahead and turn my floor off here. Move this into place. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down. You're going to see I'm moving, and I'm scaling, and I'm rotating. None of these things matter. It's not a big deal. All I got to do is go and get this thing into place so that I can start working back and forth between my two, basically my two save states for the object here. So here we got it kind of dialed into place here. There we go. So now I can work on them in both stages. So essentially it's going to be my target stage. And now if I hit switch stage, it will switch between my home and my target stage. And in fact, I don't necessarily like going over here and hitting buttons. You know, I like hotkeys for things. So instead of just having to go over here and hit this button, I'm going to hold down Control-Alt. And again, you can assign a hotkey to almost anything in ZBrush. Like my custom menu, hotkey, changing my brushes, all hotkeys. So I'm going to hold down Control-Alt. Click the switch stage button, and the top is going to say, you know, pressing a key combination. Let's just do Control-2. And now I can very quickly switch between start and end stages here. So if I go into my Z modeler brush, so BZM or a hotkey, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say bevel, edge loop complete. We'll put a little bevel in here. I'll send it back over. And now I've got a little bevel in the back. And I can also model in context. So actually, you can see, there it is. I can go ahead and model in context here. So if I go through here and say bevel, I can say, okay, how's this bevel going to look around the eyeball? Yeah, I want it about here. Cool. Now let's throw it back in here. And just like the bevel arc brushes, there's not a ton of limitations to this. So if I go in here and I say crease my Paul Gabry's there, I can hit go in here to dynamic, and it's going to go ahead and give me a dynamic mesh. So if I send the dynamic mesh over, no problem. If I want to apply these so I have real subdivision history, and I go through here and make a modeling change, send it over, no problem. If I want to go through here and I want to say Dynamesh, this result, it's going to create a resolution there. So we got a Dynamesh mesh now. Again, we can make any changes we want, send it back over, no problem. So in this instance, again, I want to put rivets around here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on tap X for my activate symmetry here. And let's go ahead and go to my standard brush. I'm going to clone this off. I don't want to mess with my standard brush. I like to have standard brush available. But I'm going to go ahead and say make this drag rack, and we'll throw in an alpha. Now in the old days, if I wanted to go through here and like put in, publish it down -100 so I get the full effect of that alpha. In the old days, what I would have to do is go in here and be like, oh shoot, it's not heavy enough. Okay, let's go up here to see intensity. Okay, that's right. Oh shoot, I wanted it to punch in, not punch in. Okay, let's undo that. Let's do Alt. No longer. I can just drag out a stroke. So, and then I can go right up here to adjust last. It's like, I want that to push in. I want to push a little more, maybe a little bit less. No problem, super fast and easy. On top of this, I can go in here and be like, I'm going to push this one out. You know what, maybe I want to push out a little more. Or, change my mind, I want to push this back in. And just like before, if we go down here to our poly groups, and I say, group change points, let's go ahead and turn on our poly groups here. All my change points are grouped. And in this instance, if we go up here to masking, if I do a mask change point, it's going to mask those interior edges. But again, these ones change the most, and then it kind of fades out to changing the least. This is where I would use, instead of boost, I would use dilute. I'm going to dilute it back to just these points in here that changed. And then I can hit Control W, make a poly group, pop that off, make it into new geometry, any number of things you can do with that. And the whole time I'm doing this, just to reiterate, I can send this back over at any point. And masking too. So if I go through here and I say, let's go to mask lasso, mask this over, and then send it back over, and maybe want to do a deformation inflate. I mean, I should use the real menu, right? Deformation inflate, no problem. Send it over, and then again, Control-2, send it back and forth. So again, super useful, super easy. Send masks over, and even BI brush insert. Go in here too, because we'll grab some industrial parts here, and I can go through and put in a little IMM brush. Now, I'm going to hit W because I want to go through here and be like, let's kind of move this around. However, in 2021.7, instead of having to go up to this top menu and kind of move them back and forth to change these out, I can use my arrow keys. So if I want to switch these for the Phillips head screwdriver or screw, no problem. Just use your left and right arrow keys, and that'll cycle through the different IMM brushes here. So again, I can just send that right back over. Mask and all, send it over, check it out, see how it works in context, and then send it back here. A little bit easier to work on. Another thing that's in the poly menu here, you're going to see there's a regroup visible. So if I have my symmetry on, so I'm going to hold that Control Shift, we're going to select lasso. So we have a poly group here, poly group here, poly group here, and in fact, even on these screws here, they have a bunch of different poly groups. So here's a poly group. And then inside here is more poly groups on here. So let's say, I don't mind that, I want to keep those poly groups, but I need to go ahead and regroup everything that I have on my screen. Keep the poly groups, just give me new poly groups. Go in here and say, regroup visible, and you're going to see, if I hold down Control Shift, select rectangle, again, all of these, same poly group, all of these, same poly groups, they've just been regrouped. All the screws, same poly groups, no problem. And in fact, just to make this a little bit more obvious maybe, I'll go ahead and turn off X symmetry, and let's say I just want to have this for, these here. Again, regroup visible, and now the rest of the screws didn't really change. However, these ones now have same poly group here, so all the poly groups have been regrouped based on what was on your screen there. So, and again, it keeps your poly groups sane and how you like them. Just gives you something new in case you need to have them separate from another asset. And speaking of IMM brushes, when I'm doing hard surface stuff, you can see like, okay, this is a Dynamesh. Well, I don't want to mix. I don't like to mix my Dynamesh with my hard surface sub D models. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Shift tap one of these screws, Control Shift A to visibility grow all, and I'm just going to go ahead and say, go in here to subtool, and we'll say split hidden. So now I have two subtools in here, and because the original mesh that I had already had the home stage and target stage set, my screws inherited that. So I can send the screws over, no problem. I can alt tap my plate, send this on over, and if I don't want to do that for both of them, I can go up here to subtool, and I can say alt to home and alt to target. So I can move everything from home to target. And just one more thing I want to bring up, just because it's like, I mean, believe me, this is super useful for things that are like, hey, I want to, have symmetry on and then move it into place. It's also surprisingly, I mean, not surprisingly, it was surprising to me how useful it was just to have a different state for any number of objects. So if I have a screw here, for example, so we got geometry, home stage, and I'm like, you know what, it's just easier to work on these if they're scaled up and bigger and off to the side, or maybe they're in the way of something I'm working on over here. I can very quickly just pop those into different states. Same thing with cloth, so if I'm like, okay, this is okay in context, but it's a little bit easier for me to work on this cloth out here, maybe turn towards the camera, maybe a little bit bigger so I don't lose my eyesight, in target stage, and go back and forth. So if you've got a guy that's, a hat needs to fit his head, but then he's also holding it in his hand, model it on his head, home stage, set it to his hand, target stage, and then you can evaluate both in context. And like, for the example of this one here, if I turn on polyframe here, and let's say go ahead and fill this with color, and that's sticker brush, RGB. So if I have something I want to paint on here, and then I want to send this back over. Let's say his eyeball falls off and I want to paint behind it. It's easy enough just to kind of pop that out and get it out of the way, do what I need to do, and then it's back into place. So I just wanted to call that out specifically as if you've got screws you need to see or have available, or a latch that needs to change state position really quickly, really easily just to set that hotkey, set home and target, and you're good to go.
Okay, nice. Well, a lot of excitement for that paper. Thanks, Michael. So we'll kick it back to me. We still have a couple more things to show. And someone asked to see this, so I'll just do it on my side. First thing, someone saw someone saying, "Hey, I want to look at a smooth version of your model, not faceted, but still have the full polygon version." There's actually two ways to do that, right? You can just turn dynamic subdiv, right? And then you're going to look at the smooth version of the model, but it's not actually the smooth version of the model. Again, it's in your geometry dynamic subdiv, right? So someone brought that up. That's one way to do it, obviously, right? And then you can control how much smoothing do you actually want with your smooth subdivision. And of course, another way, which is old school way, is in the transform. If you turn off quick mode, right, and then down here in the display properties, there's actually a smoothing slider. And you can see the mesh is smoothing. So someone asked about that. So there's your two ways to do that within ZBrush. I'm going to go back into quick mode though, right? And then someone asked to see what he was doing again with the IMM. So I'm just going to grab another IMM here. And model kit's my favorite. So I'm just going to throw something on here. And so what Michael was highlighting is in ZBrush, when you turn on the gizmo mode, this is now giving you the ability, since the sphere is now masked out, and I've got this mesh sitting here, we can just click up here, right? And then we'll swap through the pieces, right, as you're cycling through. In this version, you are now going to be able to use just the left arrow key and then the right arrow key. So you don't even have to go up to your IMM viewer or wherever you're positioning, because you can position in 4 different parts of ZBrush. And again, if you hold down the arrow, see, it cycles through fast. So you don't have to sit there and go click, 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 right? So you have to something you go, wee, right? So you can definitely do all of this as well. So someone had asked to see that again, so hopefully that helps, right? So there you go. This is a very nice thing, because I personally also use this quite a bit, having the ability to use a gizmo to swap through things like this, right? So it's very, very handy. Now, a couple other little things that I want to share with you all is, this has been a request for you all, is the palette menus. You can now use your mouse wheel. So I'm using my mouse wheel now. I don't know if you can hear it, to scroll up and down the palettes. So you're going to be able to do this now. You can use that. I personally don't use a mouse in ZBrush because they're pressure sensitive, but you have that as well. Something else that I do want to highlight for us, okay, is in the preferences. Okay, there is some additions that we've done in here. One of the big ones is, some of you will probably hear, so I'm going to go